thanks and praise to the Most High.
And you shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free.
In Europe, a man by the name of Rothschild, who claimed to be Jewish, made this statement. He really didn't care who was king or ruler, as long as he controlled the land.
There's three types of money that are recognized globally. One type's real and the other two are phony. Let's begin with the real and expose the fallacy, concluding with a timeline of our economic reality. First, real money, actual silver and gold, the value of which is based on the way it holds. Gold and silver are universally accepted, and in global commerce they're never rejected. Paper money is the illusion of funds. The United States Constitution removes confusion since the country begun. Article 1, Section 10, Part 1 says states should only use gold and silver for legal tender. This is part of the Constitution, we should remember. Gold and silver don't burn the river. Unlike money made of paper, pictures between real and fake, there's a major difference. Fake money number one, gold and silver certificates, IOUs for the gold and silver equivalent. This form of currency is connected to a precious metal, the only paper money that's remotely credible. But gold certificates are like checks for a checking account. If ain't no gold to back up the paper, then the check's gon' bounce, causing a deficit of high level amounts. And borrowing from private banks ain't the way out, cause when private banks loan money, they do it with interest, which means the debt gets bigger. The more money that's printed, then the hole gets deeper. Your economy gets weaker, and dollars ain't even worth the denomination they feature. Which leads to fake money number two, and the last paper cash is called fiat money, and it's trash. It ain't backed by nothing except a decree by the government, but in terms of actual value, it has no substance. Fiat money's only good for trade in the place where it's made, like tickets from Chuck E. Cheese or tokens from an arcade. Fiat money can be printed by the page. What I explain is an intricate plot. August 15, 1971, Nixon shot. Richard Nixon switched to U.S. currency from gold standard to a fiat. But here's the real joke, America's been broke. Your dollars ain't even dollars, they Federal Reserve notes, aka promissories. The government's promised to pay, but the promise was broke, and the fiat degrades every day, which means it takes more fiat for commercial exchange. This is a basic explanation of the equation we call inflation. When it comes to money, it's a simple concept. If it ain't gold or silver, it's an instrument of debt. But now bookmark the fiat and the Nixon shot. Let's take it all back to where it really all starts. International bankers calling gangsters and loan sharks. Now, get your understanding correct about this bank of Satan, mammon and death, money and war, gold, guns and swords. Flashback, England, the year was 1694. King William III, formerly William of Orange. War cost money, and England needed more for the conflict with France. A goldsmith named William Patterson provided finance, and here's how he did it. He loaned the throne of England 1,200,000 pounds in gold certificates at 8% interest, and an innovation in business. Patterson had exclusive rights to print money for the kingdom, and he obtained the first charter for the Bank of England. King William in Parliament signed the agreement, turning England's economy into a line of credit. The more money Patterson printed, the bigger the deficit, and England kept spending even when the balance was negative. Cause people rarely cashed in the certificates for the actual gold, cause paper money is convenient and easy to hold. But the Bank of England was not government controlled. It's a business entity that's privately owned. So the more money Patterson printed, the more money England owed. William Patterson had bought their country, then Parliament began giving grants to the East India Company. Now you had the government borrowing money to pay private corporate contracts. Sound familiar? America does that. You see, the bailout scam was invented way back. This ain't conspiracy theory, it's conspiracy fact. The 18th century banks, insurance companies, and tax collectors. In this time, the financial scam had been perfected. 300 years later, England has a multi-billion-pound deficit. The world's ruled by banks, not kings and presidents. Multinationals, corporations are treacherous and devilish. Mammon is the demon that rules money and the lust for material gain. To this day, the cult of Mammon remains a satanic game. Christ threw the money changes out the temple and was crucified within 4 days. And then my Bible and Quran, charging interest on the loan is wrong. Money changers play both sides and move nations like pawns. Simply loan sharks and gangsters doing a con. But someone will come along and take it to a level the world had never seen. A man with a devilish scheme. The place was Germany, the year was 1773. A goldsmith by the name of Bauer met with 12 men to form a 25-point plan to seize global power. As a child, Bauer's parents wanted him to complete rabbinical training. But when his parents died, he was educated in banking. He made friends with princes, he sold trinkets to build his business. But his real wealth came from loaning government's money with interest. Bauer's crest and seal was an eagle holding 5 arrows on a red shield. He changed his name to match the crest style. Circa 1760, the beginning of the House of Rothschild. The plan was to conquer the world by controlling economies. A man named Adam Weishaupt provided esoteric philosophy. The two were combined for the purpose of global monopoly. May 1st, 1776 was the birth of the Illuminati, a Zionist Luciferian cult, an elite secret society, subsidized by lies, a dynasty of tyranny. It's not a myth, they exist, they just conceal where the strings connect. It doesn't take a genius to look at the world and see Satan's in effect. But let's take another look at the Rothschild crest. It's red like blood, in the shape of a hex. An eagle is a bird of prey, arrows are tools of death. The crest 5 arrows represent Rothschild, 5 sons. The plan was to conquer the world without fire and a gun. For the House of Rothschild to begin their reign of the earth. To 5 European cities, each son was dispersed. The first son, Amsterdam, ran the bank in Frankfurt. The son, Nathan, took over the Bank of England. The second son, Solomon, started the Bank of Vienna. The fourth son, Karl, went to Naples to complete the agenda. The fifth son, Jacob, started the Central Bank of France. So the manipulative of finance, the House of Rothschild advanced. And the Illuminati was the light of the lamp. 1791, 15 years after Revolutionary War, the Rothschilds had the first Federal Reserve on American shores. The Federal Reserve owes money to a nation with minimum regulation. It's a collective of private banks backed by private investors. It's not a government agency, it's a part of the private sector. When the second charter of the U.S. Federal Reserve expired in 1836, the renewal of the charter faced intense resistance from a president who knew the risk. Andrew Jackson, with deliberate action, prevented the renewal of the Federal Reserve to happen. So the Rothschild faction divided America with civil war. The Bank of England financed the North, the South was financed by the Bank of France. It was never about slaves, divide and conquer was the plan. In 1863, the National Banking Act was passed. Once again, private banks could print cash and issue money. Within 100 years, private banks would own this country. Abraham Lincoln opposed the Federal Reserve. But before he could hinder the bankers, he was assassinated in his second term. These bankers knew what they wanted, and they knew how to get it. And once they got it, they were protected with diabolical methods. J.P. Morgan and J.D. Rockefeller were members of the collective. All 19th century industrialists were secretly connected. Same as it is now, it was back then. In the 20th century, it was next level. The Rothschilds were at it again. November 19th, Masta, conception of the modern day version of the Rothschild economic revival. Their agent Paul Woodburn held a meeting at Jekyll Island, Georgia. In the name of Novus Ordo Seclorum, aka the New World Order. A meeting of bankers, the Secretary of Treasury, and the Senator met with Paul Woodburn to plot how to control U.S. legal tender. And so new legislation for a Federal Reserve was then drafted in 1913. President Wilson signed the Federal Reserve Act after Congress passed it. America had been sold out to economic fascists. 10 private banks merged to form the Federal Reserve. Rothschild Bank of London, Lehman Brothers New York, Warburg Bank of Hamburg, Israel Moses Seif Bank of Italy, Rothschild Bank of Berlin, Goldman Sachs of New York. I'm sure you've heard of them. It was hard to penetrate Manhattan, Warburg Bank of Amsterdam, including even New York. Remember since the Federal Reserve scam began. Through this new Federal Reserve, the New World Order was economically crowded. The same year the IRS was born to collect your taxes. 1914, the money changers started the First World War of the masses. 1919, the Council for Relation was formed to implement the tactics. 1929, the stock market crashes. 1932, FDR tried to help the damage heal with his New Deal, and briefly the gold standard of currency was repealed. But America's fate was sealed. By 1938, the United States was basically bankrupt. Private banks collected hundreds of billions in interest, and they was caked up. But of course, the rule of money and war remained true. So the next big business deal was called World War II. The Rothschilds funded both sides. There are great profits to be made in wartime. Of course, this is a war crime that all involved will deny. But Carmen are always liars. Akbar was a chemical company that was a part of the Rothschild empire. Akbar was also the chemical provider for Nazi gas chambers that killed Ashkenazi Jews. Don't let the fact that they claim Judaism get you confused. Playing both sides is a tactic most nationalists use. They see the world like a chessboard, and humans are pieces they can move or lose. Remember, it's the business of mammon and death. Satan runs the company, and they have no loyalty to religion, race, or countries. World War II was an excellent opportunity to pimp the global community. So prior to the end of the Second World War, a new global economy was formed. The Bretton Woods Agreement was established in 1944. The Bretton Woods Agreement gave birth to World Bank and IMF, but the main thing it did was connect it to the dollar of the U.S. After the defeat of the Axis, the United States became the central bank of the planet, and all the world's major economies were merged. The U.S. dollar became the international reserve. The global economy was based on gold at $35 an ounce, but America didn't have enough gold to back up the world's bank account. The actual amount didn't match the gold certificates they had printed, and the NGO Federal Reserve was still gonna collect their interest. The United States had been bought, sold, and rented, and after 2 world wars in Vietnam, the debt was tremendous. Cause every reserve note printed still had that fee of interest. America couldn't cash a check and roll with the Bretton Woods Agreement. In the 1960s, the gold reserves were being bought out by the Europeans. So Richard Nixon changed the system, which brings us to our current economic conditions. And if you recall, at 2 minutes and 42 seconds, I left a bookmark. August 15, 1971, Nixon shot. The US dollar was converted from gold standard to a fiat. And all the debt from back in the days ain't never gonna get paid. For multinationals, corporations, trillions are made. Money's an illusion, they print it by the page. And the minimum wage is still less than the living wage. The Illuminati's a cartel of banks, ain't nothing changed. Regardless of your phenotypic traits and DNA, you've been played. The 85% are modern day slaves. The 10% suck your blood, it all remains the same. Money and war, mammon and death, Ponzi scheme, genocide, World Bank, IMF, corporate hitmen, corporations and the Rothschild crest. Money changers using treason, the right and the left. Con men, loan sharks and gangsters, the nature of the debt.